Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. It is Wednesday, September 20th. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by Mike Clay and Field Yates. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Guys, we got a bunch of stuff that we are going to talk about today. We got a lot of rankings that we're going to get into. We had a big waiver wire set up last night with a little bit of news that came out this morning we're going to dive into.
Sure.
Maybe a little board bet action. I don't know. We'll find out how much we disagree on some of these rankings, but I want to lead into this. If you guys don't mind. I know we should supposed to do a banter back and forth. I got a phone call on my way into work today. My buddy Kurt was like, hey, I listened to the show yesterday. So I went in and I heard Field say, go out and spend 75, 80% of your budget on Jerome Ford.
I did that.
So he went out and he said, I put in an $81 bid. Knowing that my friends listen to Field Yates for whatever unbelievable reason, was like, you know what? My friends are probably going to put in an $80 bid on this guy. So I had to put in an $85 bid on Jerome Ford in order to grab him.
Thanks a lot, Field.
That's a nice little deal right there for you.
Was I the only one to go out and spend a massive amount of my fab on Jerome Ford last night?
Nope. Mike, you want to go first?
No, so I had
no.
one
Okay,
league,
so Field, you can go.
I had one league where he was available. I did about half of my fab, and a buddy of mine beat me by $3.
$3. Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Here's what I did,
Kyren,
Daniel.
so I'm okay.
Here's what I did: is that there was one league in which the waiver system was run by Fab, and what I did was, noting that yesterday on the show, I talked about somewhere between 75 and 80% of your budget would be worth it.
Yep.
On Jerome Ford. I got him for $81.
Nice.
I went Price is Right style, baby, figuring if anybody else in that league was listening to me, they're probably thinking like, oh, he's probably going to put 75 to $80 down. Instead, I went 81. I stole him.
So Field lies on the pod. You can't trust
That's
him.
exactly what it is.
He's setting it up, so you got to go a little bit higher. So
you expect me to be a man of honor?
No,
in fantasy football?
Clearly not.
This is a game of competition.
You said you valued him at 80%, and you actually valued him at 81%.
That's correct. Well, you know what, Mike? Here's the difference between you and I. I always go the extra mile or extra 1% in life.
That's what it is.
As is the case on Fab waivers.
Field, I was feeling really good about this decision to go out and grab Jerome Ford. And then this morning, I saw that Adam Schefter reported Kareem Hunt, per sources, is going to get a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And I have a thought about this.
Okay, you lead it off then.
Yeah,
Give me that
go.
thought.
I want to not be nervous about this because all off season long, the Browns had a chance and they got the ability to look. Do we want to have Jerome Ford or Kareem Hunt on our team? And they made a decision, and it was Jerome Ford. But now I'm starting to panic, Field, because they still went out and grabbed Kareem Hunt. Talk me and all the other fantasy managers that just went out and spent so much of their budget on Jerome Ford off the ledge.
And you just answer his own question.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, you sort of gave us the answer. You asked and answered there. The Browns did have all offseason to potentially re-sign Kareem Hunt as their number 2 to play behind Nick Chubb. And they deemed instead that Jerome Ford was a superior option to be their number 2 back. Jerome Ford has played one game as not a starter, but like a large portion of the snaps for the Cleveland Browns. He turned that into over 100 rushing yards, 3 catches, and a touchdown, by the way. If you watch the game on Monday night, you know that the Browns' optimism and faith in Jerome Ford was thought out and probably worth it based off what we saw, even in that small sample size.
Yeah.
I actually really believe that there's a chance that what the Browns did in signing Kareem Hunt was basically bringing him back for the opportunity to play the role that he'd had last year, in which Nick Chubb was still amongst the highest volume carry players in the NFL and was still a top 10 running back. So maybe it puts a little bit of a damper on this, just a tiny bit, Mike, but I will continue to have Jerome Ford ranked as somewhere between like RB 12 and 15 most weeks in fantasy.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be more concerned about this if Jerome Ford played poorly on Monday night, which he definitely did not. He looked awesome, had that long run as well down the left sideline.
Sure.
So could this work into, let's say Kareem Hunt looks good, he's playing well, could it work into a hot hand sort of approach? Maybe. I guess that's possible, but I think it's unlikely for a couple of reasons. First of all, Ford playing well. Second, Hunt's hasn't been around. He hasn't been to training camp, anything. All offseason.
And he had offers. He had opportunities to go sign elsewhere. And I got the sense, typically, now things get messaged differently, right? Usually what happens publicly is the agent says, hey, waiting for the right opportunity, or, has lots of competitive offers out there in the field.
Yeah, Cam Akers has 19 suitors right now.
Correct. So. Oftentimes, what I think is the case is not necessarily that he has a bunch of offers that he's weighing, because just as a reminder, every game that you don't play is a game check missed.
Yep.
Usually it's like, yeah, the offer hasn't been very good, or the team hasn't been that impressed that they want to make a reasonable offer to this player. So my sense would have been that if something, either the Colts felt like the workout with Kareem Hunt was so impressive, they would have made him an offer competitive enough to keep him around, or in the case of the Saints, same deal. So I think there's a chance that, yeah, maybe Kareem Hunt looks kind of like the player he was last year, which was the worst that we have seen Kareem Hunt in the NFL.
That was my next point. 3 career lows in yards per carry and yards per catch last season. Also, how old is Kareem Hunt?
28. So
He's
he must
20
be
years
aged.
old.
Yeah.
Over the cliff. It's over.
Yeah.
The feature back days are done. Again, I agree with Field. I think he's going to be a complimentary piece. He could see 8 to 10 touches per game. It's possible. We saw Pierre Strong soak up a couple carries, a target or two. He only played 11 snaps in that game, but of course that was, Nick Chubb played a quarter and a half. So I think it'll be Ford, the main guy. He'll be an RB2.
Yep.
I think Kareem Hunt will get some touches, but probably not be a fantasy starter.
Can I, by the way, take like, whether you want to call it a mea culpa, whatever you want. Like I said yesterday on the show, anything is possible, but my sense was that the Browns were probably not going to go down this Kareem Hunt path. So listen, I was totally wrong, but I put my money where my mouth was by bidding $81 on Jerome Ford.
Right.
And I don't have buyer's remorse this morning. I still feel good about this. I feel like he is the replacement for Nick Chubb. Here are a couple of things that I do want to note that could take a little bit of shine off the situation. One, they play the Titans this week.
Yeah.
Yes,
So Jerome
good call.
Ford could get off to a slow start, and you might be saying to yourself, did I really need to spend $81 to acquire a player who could get shut down by the league's best run defense? Days will be better after they play the Titans. Better days will be ahead. Second of all, if they add another back, then things might get a little hairier, right? And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities from what I've heard that the Browns could continue to add backfield depth.
Don't want that
Interesting.
field.
Yeah, but it's not going to be like Jonathan Taylor, though. I mean,
No,
it's
it
not
won't be
gonna
Jonathan Taylor. No,
Yeah,
we'll
it's not somebody
see.
that we're really.
We wouldn't think
I
would
feel
happen.
like you
think
don't
so.
want to expand, but I feel like a Leonard Fournette JT level player probably unlikely with Ford and Chubb there.
Hold on, are you
you
putting
put
Leonard
Leonard
Fournette
Fournette
and
and Jonathan
JT in the
Taylor?
same
No,
category?
I just mean a player where they signed and you were like, well, yeah, they're probably going to have a role if they were
We'll see.
brought
Yeah,
in.
I'm keeping my eyes on the possibility of a little bit more depth in Cleveland. Still, that being said, as we stand right here at 11:07 Eastern Time AM on Wednesday, September 20th, I feel really good about Jerome Ford being the Browns' lead back for the rest of this season with some Kareem Hunt mixed in.
I will just say Leonard Fournette was drafted before Jonathan Taylor. I'm just saying.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow, fourth overall pick.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yeah,
You're not
Taylor
wrong.
was the second rounder.
Yeah. So there you go.
Hey, just facts.
Here's
Just
a
facts. That's all it
question.
is.
So I'm totally with you, Field. I feel the exact same way because of the way that I led in that conversation. I don't have buyer's remorse on this Jerome Ford situation. I do want to know, because we have talked about, I went out and dropped Kareem Hunt already because I didn't know if he was even going to sign with the team. At this point, let's say you're in a 10-team league.
Yeah.
Is Kareem Hunt someone that you need to add in a 10-teamer?
I think it's a worthwhile ad. Yeah, because
With how thin running back is?
a couple of reasons. Running back's really thin.
Yes.
Second of all, while I am very confident in Jerome Ford being the RB1 in Cleveland, there's a non-zero chance that Kareem Hunt is eventually the lead back in Cleveland, right? I'm not counting on it, but it's possible. It's possible.
Yep.
So I think he's a worthwhile ad to stash on your bench right now in 10-team leagues.
Yeah, there's a huge pot of players who are worthwhile, like end of bench stashes.
Yeah.
A lot of like Jerome Ford was one of them, right?
he was.
Kind of them upside insurance running backs. And I would put Hunt in the category with like the young receivers, like will they, won't they? Jonathan Mingo, Marvin Mims, sort of guys you leave on the end of your bench if they suddenly get a big boost and roll. Maybe they're fantasy starters. So I put him in that category. It's not a must hold, but he's an end of bench.
Someone that
It is,
should
I'll
be
tell you
there.
what,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
If my leagues are any indication, he is going to be added in every league. I
Yes.
went in last night, and there was just one of the 12 leagues that I play in that Kareem Hunt was not already rostered. One of 12. Now, some of that was because people added Kareem Hunt the minute Nick Chubb got hurt on Monday night.
And because he wasn't on a team, you could do that.
Yes. And some of it was because people had just added him prior to the beginning of the season, thinking maybe that Indianapolis deal came together. Now we have some clarity on the landing spot. What we don't right now know is exactly what that role is going to be in Cleveland.
Yep. All right, man. Huge day. What a roller coaster for me, spending $85 waking up to find out Kareem Hunt just signed 12 hours later.
This is fantasy football.
That's how it works,
Jerome
man.
Ford, Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Josh Reynolds is like a
Totally.
wide receiver one. Like
Oh,
this
I love
is
it.
life in fantasy football.
All right, so let's talk about it.
Granson. Have we talked about
Kylen
Kylen
Granson
Granson?
did some really cool baby photos with
that
his
was
first
awesome.
touchdown.
That was
for us.
hilarious. Yeah,
That
that
was
was
fun.
Yep.
All right, let's get into our Week 3 rankings reaction brought to you by Geico. Switch Geico, see all the ways that you could save. And we're going to start at the quarterback position, Field Yates.
Yeah, so what we did yesterday is Mike asked us, I think on the show last week, like, hey, when you're going through the initial projections, flag players that stand out to you for one reason or another.
You did that, and it was very fun, by the way.
Yeah, so I got ahead of the curve there. You're welcome. Mike, though, will be the first to tell you that how his projections line up is not exactly how his rankings are going to line up. Even Mike defies his own metrics occasionally, often,
I would
all the
say
time.
within like 2 to 3 spots. Sometimes I feel a little bit more confident in a player.
Sure.
And again, if the projection, I'll admit this, they're not going to be 100. Like I can't factor everything into a projection, so they're not going to be 100% on the money.
You know,
I know, right? So
do we need to consider whether you should ever be on the show again?
Yeah, seriously.
this is something to evaluate now that I've admitted this.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So there's an old football saying, and we'll get to the stuff here in a second. But Bill Parcells used to talk about this all the time. He'd say one wrong, all wrong, and the point was, if I ask you to do something and you get it wrong, every time going forward, if you come in and say, "No, I promise you it's right," how is he supposed to trust you? You got to earn that trust back. So maybe you should consider a career pivot.
Okay. All right, I will. I would say this week, Brandon Johnson on Denver's projection is 31.2. So you should start him. Just start him. That's right.
that's
He
not
won't be
bad.
wrong. That's what you should do.
All right. What will be your
So
next
pick 'em up.
career if it wasn't fantasy football analyst?
Fake NASCAR driving?
If that, yeah, I can
Professional
do that. I can do
bowler.
I'm bad at that though. Not bowling. I would say Disney World vacation planner.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh, wow.
Honestly,
Yeah,
you
good at
would
that.
be really good at
I'm
that
good at
because
that.
you've done it so much. He knows all the ins and outs, the
got
tips
it.
and tricks. Like this guy could set you up. All right. Speaking of setting you up, though, guys.
What are we talking about again?
That was a professional segue.
Hey,
Let's
yeah.
talk
Anyway,
about.
quarterbacks, yes.
Wait, hold on. Really, let me finish my thought. So again, sometimes the projection's like off by 0.1 or 0.2.
Sometimes.
And I'll feel like, okay, you know what? I feel a little bit more confident in the guy with the lower projection. I'll bump him up. But that's pretty much the max. So you're never gonna have a guy that's like 3 points apart. Everybody's within the vicinity.
So let me start with my first question mark then from the rankings. It was Trevor Lawrence, who was ranked
Okay.
fairly low against the Houston Texans.
All right.
Mike, are we still at the point where the Texans are not allowing receiving touchdowns because teams are just gashing them on the ground so much?
I don't know yet. It's too early to say, but they were really good against Lamar Jackson. They were good against Gardner Minshew when he came in last week. But Anthony Richardson had no trouble. You know, he didn't do much through the air, but he obviously ran for
Didn't
2
have to.
touchdowns. So
Yeah.
I guess that was on the ground, to your point, right? So what have they allowed? 2 passing touchdowns in 2 games? So off to a good start. Did Lamar
Sounds
throw one?
Correct. Lamar did.
I don't know if he
not
threw
throw
one. Maybe
week
not.
one.
Maybe he didn't
No,
throw
did
one.
not,
And
yeah.
then Minshew threw 1. So that's it then. So maybe they are still good against the pass.
Okay, so I still have Trevor Lawrence as quarterback 10. I think I'm just not comfortable, like, if I drafted him, benching him this week. But here's an interesting nugget that's going to make me sound like a moron, but this comes from our researcher today, Matt Willis, who notes that Trevor Lawrence has 29 starts since the start of 2021 that he has been held under 20 fantasy points. That's the most in the NFL. Would you have guessed that?
Most in the NFL?
Most, no.
Yeah.
No.
So you got to factor in a couple things there. Obviously, there are players that haven't made at least, as many starts as Trevor Lawrence has, right? You've got players that are either newer on the block, rookies and second-year players, plus guys that have been injured, whatever the circumstances may be. But are we convinced that Trevor Lawrence is yet a high-ceiling player might be the question that you'd ask if you saw that stat without any other context.
Mike, didn't you talk coming into this offseason that Trevor Lawrence was very boom bust?
He sure
had a
was.
bunch of single digit
That
outings.
whole offense was. Yeah, Kirk was. Last year, Zay Jones was. Ingram really was. Lawrence was. That was the nature of that offense last year. I will say this about Lawrence. In his defense, last year, he was just inside the top 10 in pretty much every passing and rushing category among quarterbacks.
Yep.
This year, just inside the top 10 in pass attempts and rushing attempts among quarterbacks. It's pretty much the same. A little disappointing last week. We thought that might be a high-scoring affair. Obviously, had a terrible fantasy day. Was better in week 1. So I think for now, in this matchup, a game where they're favored to be able to run the ball, might not be as much pass volume. I think he's a fringe QB1.
Okay, that works.
I agree with that. Even though I've got him at quarterback 12, I'm not trying to go out and replace him with a guy on the waiver wire this week. I'm still rolling with Trevor Lawrence if I drafted him.
I mean, we had him like QB7 coming in the season. We're bumping up Richardson. We have Kirk Cousins with a great matchup. It makes sense that he's down a couple spots this week, assuming assuming someone like Joe Burrow's playing as well.
What about Anthony Richardson, Fields, Yates? Are we at the point, we talked about it last week, and you went through this whole rigmarole. If I drafted Anthony Richardson and he's my quarterback too, I'm at a spot where, actually right now here in week 3, you've got a really good trade chip in Anthony Richardson. I think now is the time you got to start figuring out, am I going to move him if he's my second quarterback? If you don't have a second quarterback, is he just a must start for you at this point?
He sure is close. Worth noting, of course, that he remains in the concussion protocol as of right now. It's possible that Shane Steichen will have an update by the time you hear or watch this podcast, and it will run counter to what I just said. But from the moment that we were having this conversation, or at the moment we're having this conversation, he does remain in concussion protocol, but it's getting darn close because as far as rushing efficiency, he is the most efficient rusher in practically the entire NFL right now. Mm-hmm. He's not just great on the undesigned runs where he can scramble, take off, and make something out of nothing, but the Colts are legitimately using him as a design rusher. He's already had 2 touchdown runs in basically 5 quarters of play on quarterback draws. So if they're going to continue to rely upon him from the 10-yard line and in, it's hard not to think of Anthony Richardson as close to a lock-it-in starting quarterback week in and week out. This will be the toughest test he's faced with that Baltimore defense. Even an undermanned Baltimore defense is just a freaking dominant unit. They showed it last week against the Bengals, but I've got him as a quarterback 6 for the week here. I am fired up about the prospects of Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, QB7 this year. He's only played 63% of the snaps.
Crazy.
So that shows you what he could potentially do. I will say this: the plan here for the Colts seems pretty obvious out of the gate. They're calling pass a lot. They're the 7th pass heaviest offense in the league, adjusted for game script. That includes the Gardner Minshew plays, but also when he was playing, it was the same idea in week 1. But it's also, see a camera right there? It's like 5 yards in front of us. Don't throw it past that camera, sir. You're allowed to throw it in this range, and that's it.
Yeah.
The lowest average depth to throw in the NFL.
Really?
Like he's making Alex Smith look like Tim Tebow so far, right? It's all short range throws. As a product of that, his yards per attempt is very, very low, one of the lowest in the NFL. So that's their plan to kind of protect him from turnovers, I think, so far. And it's working.
Plan, right?
So I don't know if that's going to change yet. We'll see how teams sort of address and adjust to him, and then we'll see if he flourishes in fantasy. But I'm with you. For now, he is a mid to back end QB1.
I want to ask you guys this question. What happens with Anthony Richardson? And maybe this is a better... If Jonathan Taylor comes back and plays for this team, and maybe that's the big if, right? Do you think that there's any goal line usage that would change for Anthony Richardson, understanding he's got a top 5 running back rather than allowing those designed runs? Or is he going to keep doing that Jalen Hurts thing where he's going to be their goal line package for the Colts?
I mean, we saw Zach Moss play a very Jonathan Taylor-like role last week. He found the end zone, as did Anthony Richardson. So I'd say that the impact on Jonathan Taylor is like fairly close to net neutral for me. I wouldn't say it's like a decided advantage to have Richardson or a decided disadvantage to have Anthony Richardson.
Exactly what I was going to say. We saw Zach Moss used just like we expect Taylor to be used. Yeah. I'm with you.
All right, let's talk about a couple of running backs that have been really disappointing. Mike, Josh Jacobs has been awful through 2 weeks. 9 carries, -2 yards yesterday on Sunday. Is there a chance that he can have a bounce-back week here against the Steelers?
Yeah, I think he'll bounce back. The rushing's been terrible, but he does have 74 receiving yards. It's 4th most among running backs. Also, he's played 78% of the snaps and has an 18% target share. Both of those are up from last year. His share of the carries is down a little bit, but otherwise, we thought he might be limited early in the season, but his snaps are actually up.
He's the only reason why he's been limited is because he's getting tackled before he can even get back to the line of scrimmage.
Right.
Offensive line.
I mean, because he missed so much offseason time, we thought maybe he'd play like half the snaps for a few weeks. That has not been the case at all. He's been on the field. Also, I mentioned this on Monday, but only 39 offensive plays for the Raiders this past week. That's one of the lowest we've seen in the NFL over the past 5 seasons, actually tied for the lowest. That's a fluke. They're going to run closer to 60 to 70 plays most weeks. So tough start for Jacobs, but the usage, the volume is the key. I think going forward, he'll have better days.
Yeah, one of the biggest red flags right now for Josh Jacobs is what Daniel was alluding to, which is the yards per rush before contact. And the question is, can that change? An offensive line doesn't tend to just get better overnight.
Yeah.
This week 3 matchup might be a good matchup, though. If you look at the raw numbers for the Steelers, they have obviously been carved up on the ground in 2 games so far. Now, They faced off against the 49ers and the Browns, two of the best run gain schemes in the entire NFL, and they have been particularly bad after contact.
Yeah.
So after first contact, so it feels like they just haven't been tackling nearly well enough in Pittsburgh. So perhaps today is this week is a better week for Josh Jacobs. But yeah, there have been some pretty disconcerting signs through the first 2 weeks. That being said, like there are quite a few of those running backs that have been in the top 15 that either because of injury or because of usage or because of efficiency have not quite lived up to expectations so far.
Yep. All right, let's move ahead and talk Alexander Mattison because Field.
Hold on though.
All right, hold on. I got a finger. You guys couldn't see it, but I got a quick hold on for a second.
No, let's just. I go back and forth on this, and this is going to get serious here for a second.
Okay.
There are often times where we are made aware of people going on social media and spouting off at players and crossing lines that are so obvious that it's unfathomable that they could cross those lines. Some players opt to share them. I'm sure there are many others that opt not to share them because it could be viewed in some ways just amplifying nasty people. And so part of me thinks, is it even worth bringing this up? Because what I do know is that I do think that on social media, oftentimes, and I think this also applies to like fans inside of a stadium, it's a really tiny percentage of people that create a perception of a fan base or fan bases to be much more negative and outlandish than it actually is.
I know that well as an Eagles fan, yes.
Yeah, totally. I've always, Philadelphia fans are extremely passionate. Are there some that have crossed the line in instances in the past?
Of course.
Of course. But for the most part, it's an incredibly dedicated, passionate fan base across all four sports in Philadelphia. So on this Alexander Mattison situation, as he shared some incredibly vulgar stuff that was said to him after last Thursday night's game, part of me is like, don't bring it up because you're only amplifying the idiots who are crossing lines where they should never cross. Then I thought about this is that like part of what I think is so fun about what we do every single day is we are on this silly podcast for an hour. We talk about fantasy football. Hopefully we get a lot of stuff right. We're going to get some dumb stuff wrong as well. But what we can all agree upon is that we're doing this for one reason and one reason in particular. For the fun and the love of the game. I would love to win all 12 championships in the 12 leagues that I play in this season. There's also a chance that I win 0 of them. The difference is between me and hopefully and I think all of us and these people that are crossing these lines is that like, just a game, man. Yeah. Like we're doing this for fun. So I don't think that the people who listen to this podcast are the kind of people that are going to go out and say something to their favorite players, but maybe go the other way here. Maybe that's like the lesson learned is that like, maybe just appreciate these players a little bit more, right? They're humans like we all are. Let's take a moment to appreciate these guys and appreciate the fact that we get to watch them every single Monday, Thursday, and Sunday night. So I felt like at some points it was worth addressing just how ridiculous some of this stuff is. But like, if you're disappointed in Alexander Mattison's production, your fantasy roster, play somebody else. Pretty simple. Not his fault. He's not trying, right? Like the guy's working his butt off to be a great player, and through 2 games, it hasn't been a great result. But you know what? That's sports. Happens all the time.
Yeah, and this also goes for when a player's been reported out and you can't put him on IR yet. Same kind of thing. You don't need to be jumping in our DMs telling us that We got some comments last week. About that. I don't get it either. I'm with you.
Anyways, I just let's use whatever platform that we have, and let's hope that it extends to the people that listen to this podcast. Just like remember, this is about some fun, and remember to appreciate these players a little bit because they are still humans. And by the way, we've seen guys start really slow and then turn things around and be awesome players for the majority of the season. Yep. So if you're going to cross that nasty line, which you never should, like be prepared for the turnaround, because despite how little production there has been so far for Alexander Mattison in the Vikings running game, maybe better days are ahead.
Yeah.
This is a player who's got a really useful role in a very, very good offense. Perhaps at some points he looks more like the player we hope for coming into the season, which is why we're talking about him right now.
Speaking of which, I was going to say I'm highest on him.
Great matchup,
against the Chargers. Chargers defense have given up 63 points and a league worst 438 yards per game. Is this just like we talked about with Josh Jacobs? Is this a get right game for Alexander Mattison?
Yeah, fix me game. You mean
fix me game? Sorry, I mean a fix me game.
Right. Slow start so far. 83 yards and a touchdown through 2 games, but he has 25 touches. The key really is how often he's been on the field, which has been in terms of carry load and target share, higher than Dalvin Cook last season. And remember, Dalvin Cook appeared in every game, almost 80% of the carries and 11% of the targets so far for Mattison. Also, getting work near the goal line, 1.8 expected touchdowns is 10th most or 10th highest, in the NFL. So in terms of volume and high value touches, he's getting them so far.
Yeah.
I think there's reason for optimism. He gets back on track in a good matchup here against the Chargers.
Just a quick update, by the way. No. I'm a little lower on it. I mean, it's a good matchup. I certainly am hoping he gets back on track. I have accounted for just how ineffective the offensive line has performed up to this point. By the way, they placed their backup left tackle, who had been playing in place of Christian Darrisaw, on IR today. So it is certainly an offensive line that is looking for some answers. That's why they signed Dalton Reisner just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I thought they have a really good underrated O-line this year, but they're all hurt.
They're all hurt. Yes, they are. I should note that just moments ago, Shane Steichen, the Colts head coach, said that Anthony Richardson remains in concussion protocol. He is not practicing today.
Okay.
Good to know. Thank you, Field. Let's talk about James Cook. Last week, James Cook looked fantastic. Over 100 yards on the ground, involved in the passing game. He's kind of looking like the guy that we were hoping James Cook was going to look like. Now he takes on what is going to be a tough Commanders team. I still have him as a starter. In fact, I've got him as running back 13 because of the volume that he saw in this offense and the explosiveness. You just watch him get the ball in his hands. He is so much better than every other running back in that running back room. He is still an RB2, even though it is a tough Commanders defense for me this week, Mike.
Yeah, so you're right. He looks good so far, coming off a big game. Here's why I'm a little bit lower than you.
Ooh, I have an idea.
What?
Can I guess? Was it the number of snaps they played last week and how that was going to?
No,
they played a ton of, but they did play so many snaps last week that even though James Cook's usage was so good, it was also because there was opportunities for him to play a ton, and Latavius Murray and Damian Harris play a lot last week.
But here's the thing. I'm going to ask you guys a question.
Okay.
How many career...
This is a dad joke?
This is not a dad joke.
Okay.
How many cooks are in the kitchen? No. How many career carries does James Cook have inside the 7-yard line? Inside the opponent's 7-yard line?
7-yard line, I'll go with 3.
Is a trap question. I'm going to say...
0?
I'm going to say 4. 3.
0.
What, 0?
He has never carried the ball inside the opponent's 7-yard line.
It's amazing.
Which is incredible. Only 2 even inside the 20 this year.
Wow.
2. So they have turned to, check this out, 0.6 expected touchdowns for Cook this season, is 7th on the team. Damian Harris, Latavius Murray are both at 1.3. They both have 2 carries inside the 5. So it seems based on last year and this year,
He's a between the 20s back.
that they're not going to use him there. And that worries me. If he scores 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns this season,
I'll say this,
that's going to limit his upside. And again, still an RB2. But
Yes.
is he an RB1? I don't know about that.
So I can be with you on that. The pass, even though he's not getting the end zone, the pass catching usage that we haven't seen from a Bills running back is part of what gives me a little bit more hope here than in the past. But I totally get what you're saying, and that's not a thing that I wanted you to say. So appreciate it. Thanks for that, Stab.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're right. 10 targets in 2 games is great. If that pace keeps up, he'll be fine. But I'm pessimistic that will keep up just because of the way Josh Allen plays.
All right, let's talk about Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers has looked really good.
Give him his flowers.
Hey!
Honestly, did you guys know that we're back up top 5 for comedy podcast?
After that joke,
comedy
now we're going to
box.
be top 3.
Hey, yeah. What was your joke? Bees
A bees joke.
from Sunday? Yeah. Bees.
Well, everyone watched that. Do I have to repeat it? Want me to tell you again?
No, it's okay. I think I'd rather
Once
be
was
scared.
enough for
than
me.
get
Once
on
was
that
enough
again.
for me.
If you want to hear the dad jokes, you got to watch FF Now Sunday mornings.
We saw these Ravens get Mark Andrews back. That was one of the things. We saw a ton of Zay Flowers in week 1, in part because there was no Mark Andrews there, right?
Yeah.
Then we got Mark Andrews back in week 2. Zay Flowers still was involved in this offense. OBJ, we were told, got banged up. Sounds like he's going to be all right. Probably will play here in week 3. If you're looking at Zay Flowers' field through 3 weeks, or I guess through 2 weeks of the season, how are you approaching him going into week 3 for your fantasy lineup?
Well, first of all, did you guys hear OBJ may have a new love interest?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
No.
that's what the
Who?
internet's telling me.
Seriously?
Kim Kardashian. I don't know. That's what the internet's saying.
Wow.
Travis
I'm
Kelce,
not up on
Taylor
this
Swift,
news.
OBJ.
Yeah.
I'm
I saw
stunned
that.
by that.
What's the next
Mike.
one?
I don't know.
I got nothing.
Who's
I don't
like
know any
the
other
next
celebrities.
most famous person you know? Not like no personally, but just
I'll
like
tell
a
you what,
name.
Oof.
Max Verstappen. I don't know.
Yeah, Max Verstappen.
Is he famous? Does that count? I don't.
He is famous, yes. Not quite as famous as Kim Kardashian, but pretty famous. Or Taylor Swift. But
I know
pretty
more
famous.
about Max than I do Kim. So it's
Mike,
all
that's
in,
why you're a
It's all in the
gem.
beholder.
Sophie Turner's getting divorced from Joe Jonas, so I think
did
that
see
could
that,
be a
yeah.
thing that could be.
We're going to
used.
work our way up the entertainment charts.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, look at that. I got Zay Flowers as wide receiver 30 this week.
Okay.
I would say that
Flex play then.
Yeah, this one, so 5 targets last week after 10 in week 1. I would say that this one, more than anything, comes down to just like, of the players that we are ranking around this region, he has comparable volume but better talent. The guy's just a freak, right? I mean, he's one of the most explosive and exciting players to watch in the NFL already. Last week made this insane catch on a ridiculous dot by Lamar Jackson. So I am sort of betting on the upside here of Zay Flowers as wide receiver 30. Mike and you both, 6 spots lower at wide receiver 36.
Tough. I love Zay Flowers still. I don't even want to be 6 spots lower.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Wide receivers deep. That's what it is.
That's exactly right. Also, only 5 targets last week in a game. OBJ left, which pushed me the wrong way. He does have 3 carries though this season, which helps his touches a little bit. Also, Colts second most fantasy points to receivers in your defense. So maybe there's something there.
Anytime you can throw the ball to Nelson Aguilar, right? He went crazy this past week.
I didn't love that.
Yeah.
Didn't love seeing that.
I think I saw that of his, he went 5 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown.
Got it in the end zone.
14 snaps. Yeah, unbelievable.
Don't want it. Let's talk about Puka Nacua, guys, because everyone has been talking about Puka Nacua. Now here we are in week 3. Mike, how high is too high for you to rank him?
No such thing.
I mean, he's the number 2 scoring fantasy wide receiver. He's a 40% target share.
Yeah.
We don't expect that going forward, but you're just picking it apart if you rank him lower. I mean, I know the Rams have run the most snaps in the NFL. That's going to come down as well. The target share is going to come down. We could pick, but he can afford to lose volume and still be a wide receiver 1. So I will say this is going to be probably his toughest challenge. The Bengals have allowed the fewest fantasy points over expected to receivers so far this season. We'll see how that works out. But for now, I mean, you start him. He's on your team. You start him now.
Field and I have him at wide receiver 5, and you've got him at wide receiver 6. So we're just wondering why you don't like Puka.
Let me ask
those
this.
of you in one-team leagues have a decision to make.
I've been asked this question a lot, and it's one that I've thought about myself even before it was asked to me. When Cooper Kupp returns, what do you expect the role for both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to look like? Do you expect that when Cooper Kupp returns, and I'm not talking about returns and Sean McVay says he's going to play 30% of the snaps his first week back. I'm assuming that at some point Cooper Kupp will be fully healthy. When he is a fully healthy Cooper Kupp, given the emergence of Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, do we think the ceiling is still as high for Cooper Kupp as it has been in the past? And if so, what do we think the role is for Puka Nacua?
It's a tough call. I don't know if I have a great answer for you. I really don't know because
Did I just stump the Schwab?
Maybe.
Could Kupp just
You're
step?
welcome.
Well, I will say this. Right now, Nacua and Tutu Atwell are fantasy starters on top of Kyren Williams being an elite fantasy running back. Yep. So could there be room for Nacua and Kupp? Yes, I think so as fantasy starters. But there's no doubt that Kupp's not going to come in and have a 10% target share. It's probably going to be 20 to 25. That's going to take away from these other guys.
And I will say this. For as amazing as Puka Nacua is, and he's been absolutely sensational. It's weird. I'm going to say this and it's going to sound like a shot at Nacua, and it's really not. It's just don't forget just how absolutely absurd Cooper Kupp is. And I'm not talking about just in terms of volume. The guy's skill set is off the charts good, right? And one of the things that Cooper Kupp has always done a great job of, small sample size for Nacua, but he always finds the end zone. 0 and a touchdown so far for Nacua, which of course will probably have 4 on Monday night now that I said that, but Cooper Kupp is still so good. I have a hard time envisioning a scenario that a fully healthy Cooper Kupp is anything other than a top 6 wide receiver weekly, but maybe Nacua goes from wide receiver 6 on our board this week to maybe wide receiver 20. Seem reasonable when they're back?
Yeah, I think that's definitely reasonable.
But I would not be in the business of if you can get something that you absolutely need because your team is floundering, I don't think you need to trade Cooper Kupp right now. Because I've been asked that, should I trade Kupp right now at the idea that he might have more value he might have more value now in the hypothetical than he will when he actually returns. No, I'm in the business of holding Cooper Kupp if you can, unless you're absolutely you're 0-2 and you're the worst team in the league and you need to win desperately this week and there's a good offer available. I would be holding Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, where does Cooper Kupp do the majority of his damage?
Slot.
So Puka Nacua has 6.7 fantasy points out of the slot this year.
Yeah, he's playing outside. Yeah, right? Reynolds has been in the slot.
So the idea to me, this feels like a potential Robert Woods Cooper Kupp kind of a split like we've seen in the past. Yeah. That's how I don't want to move Puka Nacua. I don't want to move Cooper Kupp. I think with the way that the Rams are going to continue to be bad this year, aren't they going to have to throw the ball a ton?
Whoa. Continue to be bad, my friend. Have you watched them so far this season?
They have not.
Been frisky as hell.
They have been.
Did I say that?
They have been frisky, but I don't think they are good. Do you think they're a good football
I think
team?
their D is going. I think their D will be exposed more as the year goes on, and that's going to lead to a lot of opportunities to throw the football.
Yeah.
And that's good.
I'm just very
That's what I'm
impressed.
saying.
I'll say this. I'm super impressed by Sean McVay. I'm super impressed by Matthew Stafford and some of these young contributors. So I'm giving them credit where it's due. The offensive line's played way better than the talent suggests. Oh, by the way, Mike Munchak has been working with them since the summer. One of the all-time legends as far as offensive line play goes. And there's our offensive line talk for the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast.
All right, let's talk one more player here. Michael Thomas taking on the Green Bay Packers. Michael Thomas has actually gotten a good amount of volume the first couple weeks from Derek Carr.
Yeah, he's been consistent all the way, tracing back to last season. He has at least 5 catches in every game this year and last year. And of course, he only played 3 games last year and 2 this year, but 5+ catches in all 5 is interesting. He's been between 49 and 65 yards in all 5 games. He has at least 11 fantasy points in both games this season, despite not scoring a touchdown, something he did 3 times in 3 games last season. And one more number I'll give you, 24% target share. If that sustains going forward, which it could, I mean, that's a low number for him based on what we've seen when he's been healthy in his career. He's going to be a must start every week. So for now, I have him 30th this week, wide receiver 3. Would not be shocked if he jumps into the wide receiver 2 conversation.
I like Michael Thomas this week as well. You just keep seeing volume, and as long as that continues to happen, I know everyone's talking about, and we talk about this every single week. Rashid Shaheed is so fast. He's so fun the way he can get down the field. He's just not getting the same kind of volume. Michael Thomas, I think, is an unsexy guy that you can throw in your flex. You don't need to feel as uncomfortable about it as you probably do.
By the way, even with Thomas seeing 24% of the targets, Chris Olave is at 33%.
That's unreal.
That is top
Unreal.
5 sort of potential there. I mean, that's elite usage. If he keeps that up going forward in the 30 or so % target share, Olave will finish as a top 5 fantasy receiver most likely this season.
Nobody needs me to tell you about how I feel about my adult son, Chris Olave. That's obviously maybe the best player in the NFL.
I feel like his start is kind of a little unheralded, kind of under the radar. He hasn't been a great start by any means, but the usage suggests it's going to happen.
8 for 112 in week 1, 6 for 88 in week 2. And by the way, that was literally
really good,
a toenail away from being 6 for 96 with a touchdown.
It just feels like, I guess my point, he's been good. I just feel like there hasn't been
so
really,
good.
we haven't talked about it.
Yeah,
like,
he's
it's just
amazing.
There's so many other storylines, but he's been great.
All right, we have a ton of running back conversations coming up next. Running back has been a crazy position in fantasy so far this year. But first, Fields Yates, help us pay some bills.
I don't actually have the sheet right now, so I'm going to pretend if I can read the entire thing. Geico asks, how would you love to save some money on insurance?
Of course you would.
Of course you would. You know why? Because with Geico, does anybody have the sheet here somewhere? Anywhere?
That is a great question, Fields Yates. And how
here,
about
you
I
do
pivot
yours,
first?
and
I'll do
come
mine
right back.
first, and you can grab yours. Hey, college football fans. I'm going to let you in on a little secret that will help you win game days this season. Eckrich smoked sausage. You're probably asking yourself, Daniel, can it really be that easy? Absolutely it is. Eckrich smoked sausage is crafted with a perfect medley of spices for a truly rich, savory taste. They're delicious all by themselves or in any recipe you can dream up. If the word recipe sounds like a lot of work, don't worry. Visit Eckrich.com for dozens of simple, mouth-watering recipes, making your tailgating prep a stress-free event. So there you go. Eckrich smoked sausage. It's the secret to winning your game days. You can thank me later. Visit Eckrich.com for more.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
I would again.
Of course you would. I'm doing this, by the way. This is entirely off memory. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Shout out to Mike Clay for that, stealing your live read in the middle of the show.
I took it.
I mean, a little bit of like applause for me doing that entirely off memory would have been appreciated.
Yeah, seriously, Mike.
Yeah, but you didn't though.
Oh, he's calling you out. All right.
Again, I'm coming at you. You're going to trash my projections. I'm coming for you. I'm going to sabotage your live reads.
Let's talk running back decisions. Brought to you by Geico. Switch to Geico. See all the ways that you could save. Guys, this is a running back fantasy face-off, okay? Running back fantasy face-off. I'm Nick Cage. You guys can be John Travolta. We're going to talk Javonte Williams and James Cook. Back and forth here. Field Javonte Williams going up a Dolphins running defense that you should be able to get some fantasy points on. Why do you like Javonte this week? Yeah,
fifth most fantasy points so far.
The Dolphins have?
Yeah, fourth most yards.
A lot of that came
touchdowns.
against, and a lot of that came obviously in week 1 against Austin Eckler. I thought the Dolphins' run defense was way more impressive last week against that Patriots offense on Sunday night. So this is a running back showdown. Why have Javonte Williams ahead of James Cook? I feel these guys as like pretty darn similar. I've actually been the one that's been kind of skeptical on Javonte Williams' start so far. I haven't seen quite the same level of juice. So I'll take Javonte Williams, but it is a very, very, very close arrangement here.
Yeah,
interesting.
We already talked about James Cook, coming up against the Commanders, so we don't need to redo that. But I just think that's an interesting conversation because for me, James Cook, I've seen it, and he looks really good to me. Javonte, we've seen like glimpses and small sample sizes, but we haven't seen him put together a full game that makes us feel at least makes me feel super excited.
Yeah, playing more than I expected in weeks 1 and 2 based on the catastrophic knee injury he had last season. But I didn't like that he played fewer snaps than Samaje Perine last week. He still dominated the carries, but deferred a lot of pass routes and was out targeted. So for me, that knocked Williams down a few spots, enough for me to put Cook 1 spot ahead. I still feel like both are starters, though.
Both are really good spots. Yep. All right, let's talk about this. Brian Robinson, running back 3 on the season, taking on the Buffalo Bills, Mike. I like me some Brian Robinson this week. You like yourself Raheem Mostert just a little bit more.
Yeah, I do. They're very similar. A lot of carries. They're running it well. They're scoring touchdowns on the ground. Mostert actually has, what does he have? 3 touchdowns so far. I believe Robinson has 3 as well.
He does, yep.
And not getting targets. So only, Robinson is out there more in passing situations than we expected. Antonio Gibson hasn't been a factor, but he only has 5 targets so far. That's an 8% share. That's not enough to be an RB1. It's probably enough to be at best, probably a mid-range RB2. And that's kind of where Mostert's been. He's 73% of the snaps so far, a ton of carries, only 3 targets. He's been effective as well. Mostert has just proven that he's been an effective runner at this level, almost 5.5 yards per carry in his career. So giving him a slight edge. And by the way, what I feel is a much better offense. I mean, the Miami offense has been outstanding so far. So that's why he gets a slight edge between 2 guys playing very similar roles.
I can't wait to see what happens when Jeff Wilson Jr. returns. As early as week 5, and his agent suggested on TV, Drew Rosenhaus suggested on TV that it could be week 5 that Jeff Wilson Jr. is back. It doesn't sound like it'll be much longer than that, if not week 5. So I can't wait to see what happens. Raheem Mostert has earned the right to continue to be the lead back in this backfield. But as we know, this Miami offense has always thrived by relying on multiple backs, and they have been super thin behind Mostert due to injury.
Yes.
And Devon Achane just not quite being ready to be a big-time contributor for them after that injury in the preseason.
Yeah, and by the way, we did see this exact thing play out last year. Mostert was the lead guy playing most of 3/4 of the snaps, and they traded for Jeff Wilson, and Wilson kind of had a tiny edge initially. It was basically a split. Neither of the more fantasy options. We might get back to that point. And Devon Achane at some point you would expect to be a factor. He hasn't been so far. I think they're going to use 2 or 3 backs. They can make a trade for all we know. So, but again, for now, I think Mostert is an RB2. Down the road, I'm not as confident.
I want to have a big name game conversation on Kyren Williams.
Okay.
I think this is one really interesting through 2 weeks, in spite of the fact that Cam Akers even had more touches than him in week 1. We are all in on the Kyren Williams bandwagon. If you guys are starting him here this week, I want to ask you, Field, are you playing Aaron Jones or Kyren Williams this week?
You're going to sound shocked when I answer these, but I've got Kyren Williams ranked higher than Aaron Jones, who obviously we don't know if he's going to play, but I've got Kyren Williams ranked ahead of Aaron Jones.
All
yes.
right, Mike.
No, not a little bit, like quite a bit higher. Running back 5 versus running back 13.
13. All right, Kyren Williams or Ken Walker?
I'm going to say Kyren everybody, I think.
Okay, Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams or Josh Jacobs?
Kyren Williams.
I have Kyren Williams ranked ahead of him,
Kyren Williams or Travis Etienne?
Kyren Williams.
Kyren Williams or Derrick Henry?
I have one spot ahead.
Okay, so we're at the spot where Kyren Williams is being compared to Derrick Henry, at least right now in fantasy for us.
Let's talk about this. He's got 29 carries in 2 games, so 14.5 per game so far.
Like that?
He had 10 targets in week 2.
Sure did that.
10. He's found the end zone 4 times in 2 games.
No one else has done that.
I don't care about the efficiency. Yes, he leads the NFL in touchdowns scored so far. I don't care about the efficiency as a runner. He's getting enough volume, both as a runner and a receiver. Mike earlier highlighted how the Bengals have done a good job in terms of limiting receivers so far in fantasy this season. If that's the case, then maybe the Rams, who play the Bengals on Monday night, one of 2 Monday night games, lean on Kyren Williams once again in the passing game. I know this is going to sound ridiculous when you're comparing Kyren Williams to Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry. Why'd you just roll your eyes?
That's where we're at, man.
I know that's where we're at, but like
No,
we're
I'm not rolling my eyes.
It's not like this is not a game where like, reputation certainly matters and it definitely influences decision making a lot.
Yep.
But ultimately, the right decisions are often the ones that are less about like what the player's done in the past and more about what he's going to do going forward.
And we talk about, hey, don't get cute when starting your lineups. I think that's part of this conversation. Is it getting cute to start Kyren Williams as an obvious top 10 running back?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so anymore.
So last time when I was prepping, I did a little research because I was thinking back to why I was low on Kyren Williams. First of all, at Notre Dame, efficiency was outstanding. I loved him initially when we started the draft process last year.
Okay.
Then we got to the combine. He measured 5'9", 194. So that's an undersized lead back for sure. And he ran a 4.65, which is a massive red flag.
Totally.
Guys that are that slow at that
course.
size
Yeah.
do not work out. So let's put that aside and just focus on the size. Because then I'm like, okay, he's under 200 pounds, under 195, and that is a red flag for an RB1 going forward. So I look back to see over the last 20 years how many running backs score 200 plus PPR points under 195 pounds, which essentially is good enough for a top 20 season. So I was trying to figure out,
cutoff is.
it would be like basically an RB2 at worst.
Okay,
and there's some interesting names on here: Chris Johnson, Ray Rice, Steve Slayton, C.J. Spiller, Justin Forsett, Ahmad Bradshaw, Darren Sproles, work done, Philip Lindsay, Deion Lewis, Tariq Cohen. So that's the type of player I think we're dealing with the Kyren Williams. That does not scream, with a very few exceptions like Rice or Johnson.
Yep.
That doesn't scream elite fantasy running back. It screams probably like a fringe RB1 or maybe a mid-range RB2. It does also concern me a little bit.
I mean, maybe over the course of multiple seasons, but I'm worried about like just week 3 for right now, right?
Okay, but we're talking, fair, I guess. But
we're talking about week 3.
I guess
and the
that's
first
fair,
guy,
right?
there's one name that concerned me the most out of those players that you asked, and that was Derrick Henry, right? But let's go case by case. Aaron Jones he might not even lead his team in carries this week, right?
Sure.
That could be A.J. Dillon, assuming that Aaron Jones plays. Josh Jacobs had -2 rushing yards last week. Negative. The offensive line can't block for anybody.
correct.
Derrick Henry that's a totally reasonable case right there. I mean,
Picking on
Derrick Henry's,
Cleveland, by the way, it's a good rush defense.
but Derrick Henry is probably going to have 20 touches this week. Like you could convince me either way here. To me, it's less about like the sticker shock of having Kyren Williams ranked ahead of guys that are really, really good players, and more about that. Like, yes, right now, based off how he's been utilized in the one game without Cam Akers, and there's no next man up. It's not like the Rams have some other back who's now available that's going to play a much more prominent role. We got elite fantasy usage. Elite. If you added Kyren Williams off of waivers, I don't care if he's a great player, an okay player, a bad player. The elite usage is good enough to make him a must start in week 3.
Yeah, it is right now. I think I maybe jumped the gun getting to our next segment, which we're about to get to,
Okay.
kind of getting into that detail on what we think about these guys long term. I have him RB5 this week, so I agree with you for now. We're viewing him as an RB1. It would not surprise me, though, if there's a little change here, efficiency drops off, his role is
it'll drop
reduced
off, yeah.
going forward. It's just something to keep in mind. I think people are wondering that.
I agree.
Same thing with Nacua. What is this guy's value the rest of the season?
So let me ask you that rather than wait for the next segment. Let's just do this because we're already here having this conversation. Are you thinking that with Kyren Williams and the kind of usage that he's getting in this offense and all the things that you just laid out, are you trying to say now might be not a bad time for you to look at moving Kyren if you don't need a running back? Because running back is thin right now. Like, is this a time where you want to try to sell high on a guy? Or are you saying, hey, just be aware that these are some of the things that you might have to deal with if you roster him over a full season?
I would be okay with selling high on him for another running back.
Yeah.
Where I would get nervous, though, is selling any useful running back for a wide receiver or tight end. I guess a tight end would be reasonable
Running
as
back
well.
is so thin. That's what's
Right,
tough
it's just
about
so thin that if you can get Kyren Williams for a fellow back, that's fine.
But what fellow back are you getting
Right,
for?
but I just don't know if I want to be trading Kyren Williams for like a usable wide receiver when I probably already have enough depth at wide receiver to make it worthwhile.
And we've got guys that are struggling, like Josh Jacobs, that we think is a better running back. But like, I'm not going to try to trade Kyren Williams for Josh Jacobs right now.
It's a tough
That's
sell.
close, yeah. That's close, yeah. Aaron Jones, like
I get it.
pretty close,
I
yeah.
get it. Yep. You can have those
'Cause
conversations.
you just don't know. I mean, you could be getting Jones for 15 more games. You could be getting Jones for 12 more games. We don't know. That this hamstring injury, A, we don't know what the timeline is to return. B, these things tend to linger, right?
Yeah.
So that could incur some risk.
By the way, the Rams absolutely have another running back in that running back room. They just don't want to play him. They don't want
Cam Akers. I'd be surprised if he's even a Ram by the weekend. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe,
I agree.
but I'd be stunned if he's on the field active on Monday night. Stunned.
Yeah, the odds of him playing for the Rams again, by the way, are pretty much zero.
Yeah,
I mean, based on the comments for Sean
close.
McVay, it's,
Yep.
it's done.
All right, so let's talk about some replacement running backs to close out this show. Obviously, Jerome Ford, we started the show with it, Field. He is going to be one of the most utilized running backs as a replacement here in fantasy this week for Nick Chubb.
Yeah, again, I have him as RB18 this week because they put the Titans, the gnarliest run defense in the NFL. I think that number will be a lot closer to 10 most weeks, assuming that he has the role that I forecast for him right now.
Mike, let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, no David Montgomery, going to be out for potentially a couple weeks with a thigh injury. Taking on Atlanta. I know we all want Jahmyr Gibbs just to get 20 touches in this Rams offense. I'm not sure that Detroit wants to give him that kind of a workload yet.
Did you just call them the Rams?
The Rams offense? I don't know what I was thinking. As soon as I said it, I heard it in my head. I was
Traded.
like, wow.
He already traded.
Daniel, confirmed Packers fan, by the way. Can't even say your own team's name right.
Cam Akers for Jahmyr Gibbs trade would be terrible. So what are you doing with Jahmyr Gibbs? First 2 weeks, if you utilized him, he didn't really pay off the way that you wanted, but now it should be really good usage here.
Yeah, we're all at RB10 this week. That's how I feel about him. I'm not worried really at all. I think he's going to be in the 8 to 12 carry range. And right now, with David Montgomery playing a game and a half, Jahmyr Gibbs is second at running back in targets and catches.
Yep.
He's already getting a ton of passing down work and 9 targets last week. The carries inevitably will go up. I don't think they're just going to give him 4 carries and give the rest to Zonovan Knight and Craig Reynolds. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'll be involved, but I think Gibbs is going to see an uptick.
You have to call him Bam, but we have to say it like emphatically.
Bam Knight.
Night.
Yeah.
It's real name.
All right. So then what about, we did this last week. I did not want to start Zach Moss. I just want to be honest. After watching Colts running backs in week 1, I didn't have great feelings about it. Then Zach Moss came in, made me look like an idiot. Actually looked really nice in week 2. Are you rolling the dice on him again here in week 3?
I'm rolling the dice on Zach Moss again in week 3. They play the Ravens. It's a tough defense, obviously, but I've got him as a top 20 back because he played all but 2 snaps last week.
All but one. 55
snap,
of 56. Yeah.
Hold on.
Whoa. How many?
55 snaps.
Thank you. 55 out of 56 snaps last week. That is ridiculous. Now, is it likely to sustain? We'll see. It's hard to expect any back to play all but one snap in a given game. But one thing that's clear, he is the lead back right now for this Colts offense. And regardless of who is the quarterback, I don't think it changes dramatically the opportunity here for Zach Moss. So Zach Moss, quietly, a top 20 play for me this week. By the way, he has some pedigree. He was a player we all liked coming out of Utah, right? He was a 3rd-round pick. This is not some player that emerged out of nowhere, right? Mike gave you some of the indicators on Kyren Williams, right? Smaller guy, not a particularly fast guy. Like Zach Moss, by all accounts, had the chance to become a legitimate feature back in the NFL. Now he's getting that chance.
Yeah, did not work out in Buffalo. And I forgot about this, but last year he got some run with the Colts when Taylor was out. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry on almost 100 carries. Not a huge sample size, but he's playing better since getting to Indianapolis. So there could be something here, at least for the next couple of weeks. Obviously, if Taylor stays on this team and returns in week 5, Moss will be irrelevant.
Yeah. We already talked about Kyren Williams. We'll revisit him at the end of this. Joshua Kelley. Holy cow. If you started Joshua Kelley not over Austin Eckler, but in place of Austin Eckler, you were expecting a little bit more than what you got. Are you going back to him here in week 3, knowing how bad week 2 was?
Titans run D got him.
Yeah, the Titans run D definitely got him. The role was certainly it was good enough, right?
Yeah, 78% of the snaps. Yeah,
good enough. But I think the player is just average talent-wise. I'm not convinced he's a particularly great running back. So while it's a much better spot here against Minnesota, if Austin Eckler is out and we have no idea whether he's even going to practice today or not, I would have Josh Kelley as like borderline, I don't know, like running back 30 maybe.
Really, I'll be higher. I'll be probably low 20s. I'm okay with it. He had 13 carries compared to 5 for their other running backs. He had only 1 target in the game, 2 for the other running backs.
Yeah.
And part of it was just that they were throwing the ball. It was a competitive game. The Titans run D is so good. He played almost 80% of the snaps. If that happens again in this offense, he's going to be fine. So
RB 30 for me. You want to board bet him? No, I guess we can't unless Austin Eckler
Friday
is
we
out.
can.
Yeah,
We'll
okay.
see where we are
Keep
Friday,
Flag that one. Remind me, somebody. Friday, Josh Kelley board bet.
All right, we got one more guy here, Kendre Miller. Schefter reporting he's going to need some time to recover from an injury here, Field.
I believe that was in reference to Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, who has a hamstring injury, is going to need some time Monday night. So Kendre Miller, who was not active on Monday night, could be set for his season debut in week 3. It sounds like he will be ready for that season debut
Would you
in week 3.
start him as a season debut and for your fantasy lineup?
I mean, there's really not that much else you can do in New Orleans right now. Here's what I expect. Kendre Miller, I think, will play.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 60% of the running back carries. I also wouldn't be surprised if Tony Jones is brought back up from the practice squad one more time. And laugh if you want, Taysom Hill, baby. Yeah. He's going to play. And while
I don't
Taysom
ever
Hill,
want to laugh at that. I want to cry when you mention Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill is a quarterback. That's a ridiculous experiment, right? But Taysom Hill is a wild card. He's a freaking good runner.
He really
man.
is.
Like he's a super effective, efficient runner when he actually gets the ball in like reasonable opportunities. So I think it'll be a kind of a 3-man committee, rather than one person taking on a prominent role.
Taysom Hill is useless for us, and like not in
fantasy.
The NFL.
Yeah,
in fantasy,
of course.
he just all he does is
maybe
take
not
value
this
away
week.
from other
Maybe not this week as a tight end in our game. You might get some use out of Taysom Hill this week.
Yep, I have it projected as a 3-headed attack. I think all 3 guys play. Miller, if I had to pick one to start at running back, would be the guy, but I don't want to touch him this week. And it's unfortunate because he is out there in waivers. It'd be a fun guy to have stashed, and you still could do that. Don't get me wrong. And to bench stash, fine. But we're 1 week away from Alvin Kamara coming back, and we know he'll be the lead guy.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so let's rank these guys for the rest of the season because we're talking about them here in week 3. But when you're looking at these guys, there's only a few of them that I feel like stand out to me as I want to have them for the entire season.
Okay, let's do it. Who do you want number 1? Kyren Williams?
It's either going to be Kyren Williams or Jahmyr Gibbs for me.
Okay. Yeah, or Jerome Ford.
Those are the 3.
I have Gibbs higher, just buying in on the talent
Me too. I'm buying in on Jahmyr Gibbs, the talent. It's just way too good. And if he ends up, if he chews up 7 targets a game, which may sound like a lofty number, but the guy's one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL. He could crush. I would go with Jerome Ford next.
Me too, because of that offensive line.
I have Kyren second.
Okay, so then then to me it's Kyren Williams. So it's 1, 2, 3 next tier. And then I think everybody else is really, it's like you're not worried about the full season value. You're worried about what kind of value they can bring you in a pocket of games. Zach Moss would probably be the next one for me, only because at some point we do expect Austin Eckler back, hopefully some point very soon. Yep. And then Alvin Kamara comes back next week. Whereas Zach Moss, I don't know, if Jonathan Taylor's out till week 8, that wouldn't totally stun me.
Nope. No, I'm totally with you on that. And I think that's where, when you're looking at this, it seems obvious to me. I just want the talent of Jahmyr Gibbs. I love both of these guys. I think those 3 are just the obvious top 3 replacement backs within fantasy that have season-long value.
Yeah, I'd go Gibbs, Williams, Ford, then Moss, because you're getting more out of him short term, then Miller, and then I would go Kelley last, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, look, if Alvin Kamara comes back and isn't the same guy, or he struggles with injuries, Kendre Miller could be super productive in fantasy this season. The one reservation there is it's not just Kamara, it's Jamal Williams back at some point as well. He has a path to go to be the lead guy, but very interesting hold in keeper and dynasty, because he could be atop that depth chart in 2024.
Sure.
Possible.
Totally agree. Yep.
All right, we got one last thing to go through, and it's our Panic at the Fantasy Disco, guys. It's week 3. We can be
good
pretty
band,
quick about
right?
this. A very good band. Band I have heard of. Kyle Pitts, Field Yates, are you panicked or are you past whatever panicked is at this point?
Yeah, I'm past panicked. Like I already I'm so, more than anything, I'm just frustrated. I'm just disappointed, right? The leg that the Falcons have to stand on right now is that they're 2-0.
Yep.
They could be 3-0 after this week, and it wouldn't totally shock me, right? This team is going to be legitimately competitive in the division that it plays in. They've got a superstar talent in Bijan Robinson that is already mashing and will continue to do so. Yep. I would love to see more of Kyle Pitts, but 2+ seasons in, I have very little reason to believe that we're going to see much more than we have seen so far this year.
I feel like we need like a scale for these segments, right? Like I would say Kyle Pitts is, I would say 4.5 dumpster fires.
4.5 out of
5. 4.5 dumpster fires?
I don't know out of how many, but I'll say 4.5. Yeah, we'll say 4.5 out of 5 dumpster fires. Very concerned.
4.5 out of 4 for me. Like he's
4.5 out of 4.
Yeah, the dumpster fire is spread to another area of dumpster fires. That's how nervous I am about
so many
Kyle Pitts.
It's spreading across town.
The only reason why it's not whatever the maximum number of dumpster fires is.
He's 22.
No, it's not even that. It's that, like, who are you going to replace Kyle Pitts with? That's the big problem, is that you can tell me, like, go drop him.
Hunter Henry?
There are
Sam Laporta.
There are some reasonable answers, but
there's like 15 borderline tight end ones.
I was going to say, like, if you told me that on Sunday, like Hunter Henry had 2 catches for 12 yards, would you be surprised?
No,
I would think you were reading me Kyle Pitt's stat line. Actually, is what I thought.
Correct.
To be honest.
I'm just saying.
Tight ends,
I'm just like, these guys are all good players.
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
Like, are you sure that the role is going to be significant every single week? I just don't know the answer.
Mike, panic at the disco on Khalil Herbert or not?
I would say 4. You know what? I'll say 3 out of 5
dumpster fires.
Moldy wheat breads.
Okay. We're gonna change it every time.
We need different scales for different
Improv.
players. Here's the
improv.
thing with Herbert wasn't really drafted to be a starter, so what are
I
you
was going to
panicking
say,
on?
I'm not
this is
panicked
as
at all
expected.
because what do we talk about all off season? This is a stay away backfield. You want a committee? Go for it.
I would
Sweet.
say I'm excited for Roshan Johnson because
Yes.
Deontay Foreman already a healthy scratch. Johnson eating into that workload.
Yeah.
He's fresh wheat bread.
Yes,
Roshan Johnson.
that's what that
we're
is.
5 out of 5 fresh wheat bread.
You're so ridiculous.
All right, we got one more field. Deshaun Watson feels so not fun to start in fantasy. He has looked awful the first 2 weeks. I waited on him in a bunch of leagues and grabbed him as the last guy of my starting tier, and I kind of regret a bunch of it. That's where I'm at too.
Panic. You know why? Because we're 8 games into this Cleveland Browns career for Deshaun Watson, and he can't get the job done with his arm right now. It hasn't been like just the weather, hasn't been just the matchups. Like he has legitimately not looked nearly like the player he was as a thrower in Houston.
Yeah.
Panicked for sure.
Yeah, throwing doesn't look good. Efficiency's been atrocious. I will give this 4 seconds of grasping the face mask of the other player out of 5 seconds.
Oh, that was a good callback right there. I like that one. That's a good one.
I'm going to see if I can find this right now. Let me give me a second to see if I can pull this up. I'm going to try to find Deshaun Watson's highest weekly finish since becoming a Brown.
He had QB 6 in week 1. I think he had a strong couple games late last season. Last week, I'll say this in his defense: he's played Cincinnati in poor weather. He's played Pittsburgh. Yes, Tennessee this week.
Yeah,
Tennessee you should be able to throw on, right?
Maybe. But he's been really aggressive, more so than most since his rookie season in terms of forcing the ball downfield. He's been really inaccurate though. Some of the throws, I'm like, man, not even close, not even catchable.
Sure.
Way too many of those.
It's not been great. All right, that's going to close it out for us today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're going to be back on Thursday. Just Field and I making our way through a Thursday Night Football preview and a bunch of other rankings and a couple more previews for tomorrow. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself, and we will be back with you tomorrow. See ya.
Any more scales for me? We got dumpster fires, moldy breads.
Yeah, I got to think of a couple more
grasp.
here. Face mask grasps was one of them.
more.
I think how many? I'm going to do it like 5
scales.
leaf blowers before 9 a.m. in the morning. Is that like
that's a good one.
You know
that's
what
a
I
good
mean?
one. Yeah.
Why do we do that? There should
what
be
we need.
noise ordinance rules. Leaf blowers are the worst.
You're an old man.